Right, welcome back. So in this video, I wanted to go through how to merge separate subtools together properly in order to have nice clean topology, but still retain the same detail that we had before we merged it. Now, when we merge things in ZBrush, when we zero mesh in ZBrush, we do lose a lot of detail. And when we merge things in ZBrush, we don't actually fuse things together. They are still separate objects, basically. So this character here is made up of a couple of different pieces. So you have the main body, then you have the hands, and then the ears are separate as well. So at this stage, when we're still in the secondary shape stage, it's probably a good idea to start merging these things together sooner rather than later, because later on introduces a lot more risk when we have more polygons and more details that we're trying to sort of retain as we merge things together. So at this stage, it's probably best to do the merging process. Now, not everyone would need to merge their subtools together. So if you have a creature where things are kind of naturally separated anyways, so think about like segments of an insect's leg or segments on a crab's leg or any sort of segmented pieces of a body, those things probably would be better separated anyways, just because it'll be easier to maintain the look. Some things in here I'm not going to merge. So the eyeballs, I'm never going to merge that together. There's never been a time where I've had to merge the eyeballs for any character that I've done. And I can't imagine that you guys would need to do that as well. The tusk on this character, I'm not going to merge. I'm going to keep them separately. So what I've done is just move the eyeballs and the tusk down to the bottom, just by dragging these things down in the list. And I have the ears, the hand right below the thing I want to merge with. Now, just so I can see exactly what I'm going to merge, I'm going to hide everything that doesn't need to be merged together. So I'm going to click the eyeballs of these subtools and this one here as well. Okay, so I'm going to have the top one selected. This is what I want everything to be merged to. And then down the bottom here, we have a section called merge. So you can just press merge down. It's going to let you know this is an undoable operation. So you probably want to make a save backup just in case, but I'm going to press OK. And I've got to do that one more time for the hands. Great, so they're all together now. As you can see, if I press Shift F, they aren't actually fused together. So they are separate subtools, or they are separate objects, sorry, but it's part of one subtool. So you can see here, that's separated. So whilst it might seem okay to have them together like this, because there are different resolution, it can be quite obvious that they're separated. So if I run a damn standard across the two, you can see this part here is quite smooth because it's very dense in its detail, in its resolution, whereas up here is quite low res. And whilst you can subdivide the mesh to try to keep it as even as possible before merging, you don't necessarily want to do that anyways, because the mesh becomes quite messy. And when you do need to project back over, which you probably will at some point, it introduces a lot more artifacting, as well as the performance is quite laggy as well. So it's much more optimal to merge them, fuse them together, and then reproject the details on than to have multiple objects sort of connected to this one subtool. Great, so now that we have these two pieces merge to the main body, what I'm going to do is duplicate this model. So press the duplicate button. Now we have two. This original one is going to serve as the model that is messy, but it has all the details that we want. So you can see that it has all the sculpted details, but it's going to be all separated into individual pieces that's merged together. And this one's going to be the new one that we're going to be working on from now on. What we need to do is fuse the pieces together and then reproject the details from the bad one over to the new one. Now, take a look at your mesh before we fuse. Any areas where it's quite close together, you want to keep an eye on, because the fusing process can jump across parts that are too close together. So I suspect that it's going to happen right here with the fingers, because they're pretty much touching. But let's see. So with the duplicate selected, let's scroll down to where it says geometry. And then we want to dynamesh that together. What I'm going to do is increase the resolution to the max. That way, any areas that's quite close together will retain that separation. It's not foolproof, but any areas that's pretty close should have its separation. If you have it quite low, then it can cross over quite easily and fuse together. So let's press Dynamesh. Great. So we can see this. I'm just going to isolate this object. You can see that it's fused together here, which is not what we want. And over here is pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. So that doesn't look too bad. And over here, which is another area that's close together, that looks pretty good as well. So really, the only areas that had an issue was the finger. So I'm going to press Ctrl Z to go back. And all I'm going to do is just smooth out this area to try to separate the two. So it's a bit difficult because it's quite dense. What I can try is a different brush. So in my light box under brushes, there's a smooth section, and there's a brush called Smooth Strong. So this one here. So let's try that. It's going to be assigned to our Shift key. That just gives me a much more intense smooth. This works really well for high resolution objects. Okay, so don't worry that we're sort of smoothing out the detail, because we're going to reproject that on. Right, so let's try the Dynamesh again. Let's increase the resolution. And then let's press project. Dynamesh. Great, so that looks good. There's no issues there. And you can see it's now fused together. So just inspect your mesh to make sure that it is indeed good. And over here. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. Now, Dynamesh fuses things together, but it gives it quite a messy topology, right? If we look at areas like here, there's quite a lot of triangles, and we really don't want triangles when we're sculpting. In this sort of secondary stage, it probably will be fine, but when we work in tertiary shapes, in millions and millions of polygons, these can become an issue, and it's hard to get rid of. So we want to do that now. The best way to do that is just to zero mesh it. Right, so I'm going to run a zero mesher. Let's go half and turn adaptive off. We want nice even quad sizes. All right, so let's take a look. That looks pretty good. So the finger on this one is all weird looking. So this was an older save, so I just want to double check why that's happening. Okay. Great, so it's like that on the old one. So what I'm going to do in the Z-remesher is make sure I don't have symmetry turned on. That way it'll be asymmetrical in its Z-remesh. Alright, so that's not what I want, obviously. So let's Control Z that back and So what's going to happen is that when I reproject this on, because this part here is going to be projected onto this side, the projection on the hand is going to look a little weird. And what I'm going to do is just quickly make this symmetrical. So I'll just mirror this across and then mirror weld. Okay, so let's bring back symmetry. I'm going to Z-remesh this. So now it's both sides the same and it should be fine now. Great. So that looks pretty good. I'm going to go half one more time, just so my base level isn't so high in polygons. Okay, that looks pretty good. So now I'm going to bring back my original one. Now that one has the details on it, but it has a messy topology. This one has a good distribution of polygons, but there's no detail. We lost all the details. So we just have to project the details back on. So what I'm going to do is just have both of these guys visible. I'm going to highlight the good one, and then under project, I'm going to press project all. So after we do this, we need to inspect the mesh. So what I like to do is just turn on solo. And this is the good one. And then when I click the bad one, I can see that we got some detail back, but not a lot. And that's because this mesh here is too low resolution to take the detail on. So all we need to do is subdivide the good one. So that's Control D. Let's get out of solo mode. Make sure we have the good one selected and then project all. So let's inspect. I'm going to go to solo. So that's the good one. Bad one. So pretty close. I think we can go one more time and that should be enough. So let's Control D to subdivide the good one. Leave solo mode and then project all. All right, let's take a look. So pretty much identical. It's no real difference. So I'm happy with this level of detail. So I can hide this original one. We don't need that anymore. And all we need to do now is focus on any cleanup. So over here where the ears are, this is where the merging happened. All you need to do is either clay buildup, come into here and fill that out, or smooth it out. Probably don't want to use smooth stronger, so just go back to it by coming back to the light box, and it's just this one here, smooth 35. Some areas are a bit more difficult to fix, but this looks pretty good. There's no real errors here. It's just some light cleanup to blend the two back together. And more often than not, you could just use smooth to get rid of it. Now, if some areas are a bit more aggressive in its artifacting, you might need to isolate those areas and work on them at a more sort of poly by poly level. So let's say we had some areas that were issues over here. We can isolate it by holding down Control Shift, dragging a box, and then just working poly by poly on the areas that have been affected. So you can sort of see this red dot jumping around. As that red dot jumps around, what's going to happen when you click is that effect is only going to happen on that polygon. So you can really target very specific polygons and fix that. So quite often you might have something like this, where the polygons have sort of just jumped and went a little bit crazy. So what you need to do is isolate that area. Make sure the red dot is highlighting that polygon. Hold down Shift. Smooth that back down. And it's a polygon by polygon process. Right, so here. Just like that. Okay, and that's how we merge subtools and reproject the details back over.